The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
George, how are you?
I am well, sir. How about yourself?
I'm whipping it good. Whip it good. So, first tangent of the show, like 12 seconds in. I actually have. It's called an energy dome, like the Devo hat. It's like it's right here. It's right next to my desk.
Were you wearing it the entire time you were playing Castlevania?
No, and now I feel like we should just not record this episode, and in 2 weeks after having done that, then we can do it.
All right, everybody, like us on Facebook and Twitter.
Like and subscribe, y'all. Whip that subscribe button. Yeah, so Castlevania, we played Castlevania, the first one.
Yes, not Simon's Quest, which is garbage, and OG Castlevania. Castlevania, the Castlevania.
Yep. Which I realized after we started playing this that my nostalgia goggles for this are, let's say, unclear to me, because I know with a really high level of confidence that I did not own this game, and yet I can't place who did. So, like, where this game fit into my childhood, I actually don't have, like, a good story for. Like, I know I played it. I just don't really know when or where.
When or where, with whom. I mean, you were just probably going into a dark alleyway somewhere, somebody who had just had a Nintendo set up down there. You really wanted the ambiance, the horror aesthetic.
Guy with, like, a trench coat who's like, hey, kid, want to play some Castlevania?
And you're like, I don't know. And then it just smash cuts to you like, yay! All sunshine and rainbows.
And he's just behind me like, jump over the Medusa head.
Oh, come on. You're better than this.
Yeah, not every creep with a gruff voice and a trench coat is that kind of creep.
I know, right? No, for me, I definitely owned this one. And just, it wasn't one that I threw tons of time at, just because so we can't really dance too long about the elephant in the room, which is this game is notorious for being extremely hard.
So hard.
Yeah. So it's so hard, but it's not punishing, and we'll get into that with like the way the gameplay works. But like I said, like this game, I definitely played it, and I played it a lot, but I didn't play it a tremendous amount because it was hard, man. It was hard. Like,
when you didn't even have the stereotype of like the older brother or sister that you could go to and be like, can you beat this boss for me?
No, it was just, you just slammed him to the same thing over and over and over again. And then you ran out of all of your lives. And this is definitely like a gameplay note, but, so like what I would do is if, because there are stages within stages, right? So each stage, right, like has like 3 or 4 areas that like they're like mini obstacle courses, right?
Yeah.
So if I died in the beginning of a stage back in the day, I would just be like, oh man, that's going to make it so much harder to get through the rest of the stage. This time when I played through, if I died at the beginning of the stage, I just walked my happy ass off the cliff 2 more times and then just started over with 3 lives, so.
Well, because it's the door. Well, we'll get to this in mechanics, but yeah, I agree with you that it's like I need the maximum amount of my strength between here and the next door.
Yeah, but it's very much akin to, walking into a room, getting a paper cut, and then committing seppuku,
Well, but knowing like you have a resurrection stone.
Yeah. But anyways, visuals.
So the graphics in this game are Super Nintendo-y, not Super Nintendo-y, but they're extremely Nintendo-y. And I actually found that to be really pleasant, except on the map screen, like the level screen. Like
Yeah.
every part of the levels is just like, wow, look at what the Nintendo is capable of. Like the stones have textures, and like the whip, you could kind of see like once you get to the chain whip, it's got the little like chain, outline to it, and the zombies, like their clothes are all ragged, and the Medusa heads, like you can sort of see the individual snakes in their hair. Like it's really impressive levels of detail for this time in history. And then you get in between levels, and the map is just like rectangles.
Yep.
It's just like it's just so jarring from like the love and attention that I swear that whoever the person who did the art for the map, like they must have found out they were going to get fired after this project. They're just like, I'll show you.
This will teach you. And honestly, to be entirely honest, I think it speaks to the. So I personally think this obviously this game is centered around fear. Right, it's a horror game.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I mean, this is not Yoshi's Island. This isn't like you're not gonna turn this on and hand it to like a 4-year-old and be like, hey kid, you want to have just a good old. No, like you're supposed to be scared and you're supposed to be on edge, right? So after defeating, because you see the map screen after defeating a boss before you go into new things. So that's like in the tension and release cycle, like that's the release, right? Because you beat the boss. But it's starting to build the tension again because you're about to be thrown into a new level, right? And honestly, I paid so little attention to the map because I was already starting to stress out a little bit about what the next thing was going to happen to me. That visual didn't smack me in the face too hard, just because I wasn't worried about the map, man. I kind of looked down briefly at the map and then stared horrified out in front of me, no, what's going to come after me next?
That's not actually completely unreasonable, and I don't know when it entered the mythos, but at some point in the Castlevania mythology, it's established fact that Dracula's castle, every time it reappears, has shape shifted and reconfigured itself. So I don't know if that was true from the word go in the original Castlevania or if they kind of retconned that in later, but I mean the map itself makes no sense. The castle shaped all weird. There's impossible turrets and stuff coming off it. So it's believable that the intention is for the map to seem unhelpful and pointless.
Right.
But I don't know. It's just the level of detail is so low, and
yeah,
the music has just ended for the level, and you're waiting for the music in the next level to start. And it just goes it's like a walking noise, yeah. So it's just I don't. It's not like I get to choose where I go. Do they even need to show me this?
And I think that was a beginning attempt at because especially games of this. I mean, newer games have this stuff kind of mastered, but it was a beginning attempt at it's not just one level leading into another level leading into another level. You are exploring a castle, and so they're oh, look, you started here, and then this links you into this other area, and oh, now you have to go into the sewers because why not? Because sewers. And yeah, and so so I think that that's what they were trying to do, but I would agree that the map definitely falls flat a little bit. One of the things though that I kind of was that you kind of touched on, which is the whip, right? So the whip, when you first get it, it is a whip, right? And then
it's like a short leather whip,
right? And then you get the whip power up, which is not a whip anymore.
No, it's like a length of chain that the warriors would carry.
Yeah, and then the final one is so I would say that the second one is almost closer to a flail. And then the third one is a 9-section steel whip with a giant spiked ball on the end of it, And the only reason why I bring that up is because so as far as a visual and service of gameplay, absolutely it accomplished that in the sense that I knew every single time I hit the whip button which level of whip I had. It was very clear.
No ambiguity.
No ambiguity. I knew if I had the garbage leather whip, the intermediate whip, or the whip that realistically, if you don't have it, the game is nigh unplayable. But with all of that being said, though, to me it was just kind of okay, so Simon, he's got his whip, right? Everybody knows that's his thing. Except that most of the time you're not using a whip. You're using this insane metal weapon that you're way more likely to hurt yourself with than anything else. So that was just kind of a thing.
So we've had a history of will, boot up a game and then just immediately dive into it. And this game did us the courtesy of having no options. There's no options screen. There's no options to configure. There's no choices. And I wonder if from a game design standpoint, the whip is the built-in difficulty mode, because the leather whip that you start with is short. Yes. The chain whip, the first level power up, I think is the same length, but it hits harder. Yes. And then the super chain whip is like giant. It's like twice the length. Yes. So, and if you die and you lose the whip power up, within the first 4 candles you snuff out, you're going to get 2 whip power ups. So like, if you want to play the game on the easiest setting, not easy, but the easiest setting, like they make that very accessible for you. So I kind of wonder if like that was sort of like an intentional, like, hey, beat the game with the chain whip and then maybe try it with just like the leather whip and see if you could still do it.
Well, so to me, the what I think that it is again. So first of all, I mean, I think I hold this game in high esteem, so I am much more likely to be like, oh, this is what they were trying to do, even though they may have just gotten lucky, So I don't want to gush too hard, but what I think that it is, I think that actually that helps add to the horror aesthetic, because so like you said, you snuff out 4 or 5 candles, you're going to get the 2 whip power ups, right? Well, no, they're going to drop. You may not get them, because there were a number of times where like I hit it and then I got knocked away and like I couldn't pick it up. Or one of them, I think you hit it, and if you're not close enough, it just falls directly in like off the screen.
Yeah, right into a pit. Yep.
Yeah. So it's a way of saying like, even this thing that you are relying on and you have 90% of the time, it's not guaranteed that you have it. You got to focus, because when you hit that candle, you got to make sure that you are in the right place, that you're being a vampire hunter. You're being very careful and mindful of your surroundings, because if you're not, if you mess up even a little bit, you can lose this thing that makes the rest of the game so much harder, Yeah.
And so that actually raises an interesting question for me, because I like that you always think of like, how well do these visuals actually service the gameplay? And from the moment you enter the first level, there is a candle on the screen. It's like a little fire on a pillar. Right. But there's a thing you can whip that will drop an item drop. And I'm looking at the screen, like I just turned the game on, I got the controller in my hand, and I'm like, if I didn't know I needed to hit that, would I hit that? Or like I really, and because you go, I don't know, 2 full screen lengths before you see your first enemy. Actually, right. No, considerably further. So like, would I have just started like pressing buttons if I didn't know what to do? I think I might have, right? Like I might have figured out like, oh, okay, this is the whip button, this is the jump button, arrows make me move back and forward, but I'm just trying to think, like, based on the visuals as they're presented, is there anything you can think of where you're like, oh, obviously, you should hit this with your whip?
No, and I may be wrong on this, but if I remember correctly, the first one of those that exists is directly from when you spawn into the beginning of the game. It is within whip distance. So assuming you don't move too far, if you literally start off the game like most devs would assume that you do, especially in the NES days where you've got A and B, the D-pad is pretty much like, you look at it, it's got arrows on it. Like that's what makes you move. Start and select never ever do anything other than start and select, except in some games when they do. But we can generally assume that they don't. So if you hit A and B, you're going to jump up in place, and then you're going to whip, and then you're automatically going to destroy the thing in front of you.
Yeah, I'd have to check those measurements, but it's believable that if not right there, somewhere early on, maybe actually in the next room, the zombies pour in fast enough that you are likely to hit a candle while you're trying to hit them.
Yeah.
So maybe they're like, well, if you don't do it on the first screen, you'll almost definitely do it on the second screen. And if you somehow make it all the way through the game without hitting a single candle, how did you do that?
Yeah, I think that's the hard mode of the game. Yeah, and you'd have to be such a stubborn jerk in order to get like all in and be like, oh, well, I never hit a single candle. It's like some of them are in places where they're begging to be hit, but you can get through the entire game without getting to is hidden mysterious roasted wall chicken.
No, I disagree.
No, yeah?
Yes. So as far as I know, the first dungeon wall chicken. Oh my God. The first time that happens in a level, and this kind of speaks to the level design, is when you approach a flight of stairs, you have to hold down if they are downstairs.
Yes.
Otherwise, you will just walk off them like to your death, which is a little weird because they try and make the stairs look pseudo 3-dimensional, like they have some depth to them. But the fact that you can fall through them implies that every flight of stairs is like free floating with no railing.
Yeah.
It's like you're looking into a diorama and there's like no fourth wall.
Now, one of my I'm definitely, you know, like this game's, it's hard, you know, it's a hard game. So I definitely, you know, hit not like a true rage wall, but like a couple times I was like come on. And one of them was when I was just kind of like, all right, well, you know, there are these stairs. I just kind of like walked over to it, and I thought I had to be a lot closer to the stairs than you needed to be before you could hit down. And I got a little too far out, and then just like plummeted, and it's like do 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 do, you know. And I'll tell you what, man, I hear that little tone in my nightmares now. Yeah. But yeah,
well, so the reason I mentioned that though is when you fall off that first flight of stairs, you don't fall the very first time that you can go downstairs. You don't fall to your death. You fall to the bottom of like a little, I don't know, like tower of blocks. And if you whip from where you are likely to fall, you will hit the wall and there's chicken there. So it's not like they don't spoon feed it to you. It's not like there's a monster there and you hit the monster and you also hit the wall. So of course it happens. Like you could easily never ever find that, but there's enough of a chance that it's like, oh, somebody might fall down and it might hit the whip button and kind of just be like, God damn it, I fell down, and like whip chicken out of the wall.
Yeah, no, I really feel like the chicken also, and it's straying into mechanics a little bit, but is also, to me, because, you know, we play Dungeons and Dragons, right? So we are both want to project stories onto like empty vessels, right?
Yeah, it's hard to come up with a good narrative for wall chicken, but it's not impossible.
Well, no, but it totally makes you the crazy person, right? Because I whipped all of the walls. So I'm like in this dungeon, like desperately, like if I had, you know, a sidekick, you would wonder why when I walk into a room, I start pawing at like the ground floor and like all this sort of stuff, desperately trying to find the chicken in the walls. And you know, so yeah, I think that just, to me, further drove home the desperation of you, the hero, that you were just like trying to find food in the walls. So
yeah, no, I like that headcanon accepted. So for like in general, like I mean, I kind of said it, like I was sort of blown away, like, oh my God, these graphics are so beautiful. And the two things that I noticed, because we have picked this apart in like almost every game we've touched, is there's just literally zero palette swapping. There's none. Every character has whatever palette they have, and every time you see them, they have that palette, and you know exactly how many whips it'll take to kill them and how they're going to move. Like, just 100% consistency. And then each boss sprite is like super unique and super cool looking, and it was like, I don't want to rag on other games too much that use palette swapping like as a partial game mechanic, but it was kind of refreshing. Like, oh, Medusa heads, they always look and behave like Medusa heads, always.
Right. But I mean, I think that to me, so I feel that this game was at a minimum put together with intention and well thought out, right? So basically, I think that honestly, they started with the idea of like, can we make a horror game for the NES, right? You know, like, is that something that we can even do, you know? Because I mean, you look at some of the sprites and some of the things, you know, what the hardware is capable of, right? And you're like, well, can it even be done? And I think that everything is in service to that aesthetic, you know? So you can't have too much palette swapping because that feels samey, and samey isn't terrifying, right? So every time I would see like a new enemy move, like you said, they always move the same way. They're predictable and they telegraph, right? So if you are the consummate vampire hunter and you are focused and you're paying attention, you can pick apart what the enemy is going to do. But every time I would see a new enemy, I would hesitate and like I would be a little afraid because I don't know the first time I see it what that enemy's going to do, you know?
Well, and some of them, like the Medusa heads, are annoying but exceptionally predictable because they just move in
Yes.
like a sine wave pattern
Yes.
or cosine wave, if you know. So
Well, it depends on where the intercept is, but yeah.
exactly. So like they're annoying, but you can learn to deal with them pretty well. Whereas every time I saw the sprite, and I have all kinds of notes for this for later. Every time I saw the sprite of the little hunchback guy, like that filled me with dread, right? Like that was my horror, because they move in a completely erratic way that no other monster in the entire game moves like. No boss, no, regular enemy. And still, like, just that little sprite appearing on screen, I was just like, oh dear God, I'm probably gonna die.
Oh yeah, no, every time I saw that sprite, like it was interesting because the way that I found that they moved is that normally the first time that they hit the ground, they are within whipping distance and you can kill them. And if you don't, that is the end of your world. Like you either solve that problem right then or it becomes a huge problem that just does not go away or leave you alone.
Yeah, dude, it's Ender's Game. You got to win that fight and every other fight.
Yeah, like there's one of the levels where it's when you come out of the sewers and the eagles are dropping them at you. And like, yeah, like I'd just be like, walk. And then like the minute that the thing that I was like whip. Okay. No, whip. And then like at one point, like one would fall and then he'd start to jump up and I was like, no, because now he's jumping around. So I got to duck, weave and move him, but they're not stopping, dropping them. So, it was, oh God, it was nightmarish.
Yeah, there's that one hallway, if we're talking about the same part, is like that hallway is designed to be done perfectly because one error immediately compounds itself. It's like if you went into a bank and they had like 10,000% interest on your savings account. Like the second you put that dollar in, it's just like, you're rich. And it's like the second you miss that first little hoppy guy, it's like you're dead.
Yeah. Like you have now ratcheted the difficulty up so much higher, and which you're unlikely to be able to deal with because you duffed the first thing, So yeah, no. So but I completely agree. No palette swapping. All the sprites were unique and interesting, and like fun in a weird, I want to hang myself kind of way, but and all of them. And as far as visuals and services of the gameplay, like I think that first of all of the power-ups that you get, right? Both the sound, because this is both audio from an audio standpoint and a visual standpoint, it is very clear when you pick up like a new whip, when you pick up a new item, whatever. And one of the things they do is they generally give you the best item for what you're about to be doing, So
yes, and I think the first 2 or 3 entire levels, you can't screw that up. It's not until like the second half of the game where they're like, hey, we're going to let you accidentally pick up a non-optimal item. We'll give you the optimal one, but we'll also let you screw it up.
Exactly. Yeah. So, they're teaching you, right? But because the visuals are so stark with it in that regard, and each of the sprites are so unique and different, it very easily allows you to piece together like what you're supposed to be doing. So, for example, at one point you get the holy water, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then like I just walked out and I saw a skeleton just throwing bones at me, right? And I was like, well, if I try to whip him, it's going to be a nightmare at best. Like probably I will get hit once and he'll get hit once, and that's best case scenario, right? I was like, but I can just easily toss, the holy water at him, and it completely solved the problem. So all of the visuals very strongly service that, because like when the skeleton's throwing his bones, they all arc at about the same angle. He's throwing them in a consistent time frame. It's very, very clear, the animation of like where its hitbox is in comparison to yours. It's all very clean and crisp. At no point did I get hit and think, nah, man, that shouldn't hit me. Like I deserved it every time. So
yeah, and it's impressive that you can go through the level. And I mean, I don't want to, pat them on the back too hard. Like I'm sure there are things about this that have gotten very shiny, through nostalgia goggles, but there are things that feel very well communicated, especially for this time in history when this kind of game was like a whole new thing. So to be able to walk through a level and say, I know what's expected of me, I know what my tools are, I know how I can use them to solve problems, but to still feel like disempowered and concerned and like you're treading very, very carefully. Because it's like, it's kind of like, I know what I need to do, like performing surgery on yourself, like in Master and Commander. It's like, I know what I need to do, but if I screw this up, I'm going to bleed to death. So I'm still not like happy-go-lucky about it. I just understand what needs to be done.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I thought they did a great job with that. One of the other little visuals, and again, to me, it just everything about this seems planned to the point where I don't really ever want to hang out with the guy who planned it, because he seems like he or she would be such a huge pain in the butt, like they'd be the biggest stick in the mud, because they'd be like, oh, well, no, if you're going to do it this way, then here are the 15 notes I have of minor nuance changes to exactly what you did, because it's so thought out. Right. But like one of the things they did with Simon's avatar that I just thought was interesting is that, so, it's NES era graphics. So, he's very clearly human. And one of the places where, I've said a number of times where NES got away with a lot more than they normally would is that, it's the left side of the uncanny valley, right? So they're animating things that aren't human, or even if they are human, they're a cartoon like Mario. Nobody looks like Mario.
God, I hope not.
No, I mean, if they did, they'd be in a Castlevania game as a villain. So yeah, but this one they're actually trying to animate a person. I thought they did a great job with it. Like all the proportions are fine. It was very easy to represent the human form. But the one thing that they did where I was like, oh, that was actually a really nice touch, is they don't give him an eye. They give him the eye ridge. So
yes.
So and I thought that was kind of clever, is because like if they had used, because most of the time eyes are like black dots, or in this case it'd probably be that dark brown, which is his like outline, know?
Yeah. So you'd have like 1, maybe 2 pixels dedicated to that task.
Right, exactly. But then that would just kind of make him look like he was in constant state of shock and surprise, which he is and should be. But,
he may be.
Yeah, he may be the whole time being like, ah, but no, just having like the eye ridge to me like made, I don't know why, it made me feel like he was like kind of like head down, looking out of the top of his eyes, like focused and all this sort of stuff, because it's just the shadow of his brow.
Yeah, it's the steely-eyed vampire hunter. And I didn't notice that, but the second you described it, I was instantly able to picture it, and I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. So it's just little things like that, because I'm sure that, they went to the person who made this, not Steve. Steve's bad at his job. But
Jennifer, the artist?
Yes, they went to Jennifer, and they were like, hey, here are the 15 different ways we can, like, animate Simon. And she just said like that one, and it was it was absolutely the correct call, because like I said, I feel even if that was off by half a shade, it would have looked eerie and weird. But the fact that it was like, no, that's clearly the shadow being cast by his downward turned brow as he is like stolidly muscling forward, I was like, yeah.
Well, and again, having not thought of it, you're now like, I'm making all kinds of connections in my brain. The first boss you fight is the giant bat, and the giant bat he's camera on, which is a little weird, because from Simon's point of view, is he just looking at him from the side, or is it that he's far enough away that he's like in his periphery, kind of like in his flank? But anyway, the bat is facing the camera, not the character model. So you see this giant like jack-o'-lantern mouth, and several pixels dedicated to these like great staring eyes. And yeah, like those two things side by side, like if Simon had these like giant staring eyes the entire game, you'd just be like, take this seriously, like stop being so amazed, like your life is on the line.
Yeah, you are a vampire hunter warrior going into the den of your enemy, not a child being taken on a tour staring wide-eyed. Oh man, check out that vampire! Oh, look at that vampire! Hey, check out that vampire! No, that's not what's going down, man.
Whereas on the bat face, the big eyes with like the jagged teeth, like Cheshire grin, is not wide-eyed and surprised. It's like a terrifying hunger. Like, oh, this bat doesn't want to kill me. This bat wants to kill and eat me.
Yes, and is really super super into
super
it.
jazzed. Yeah, super jazzed.
Yeah, like this is his Disney World where he's just like, yeah,
come into my house
with this. But yeah, as far as like I said, I think all the visuals were very nice. All of the different levels, despite the fact that they all had blocks, they all had stairs. I thought that they all had a really unique feel to them, and I think that and again, we've said before is that there's kind of bad palette swapping and good palette swapping, and one of the main things that kind of made the levels different was the backdrops. And they kind of palette swap the level, Yeah,
the blocks themselves, like, oh, in this level the block is like black and orange, and in this level it's like green and brown, and it's right. the texture, what texture there is, but like the texture pattern is painted in the same way, but because the colors are different, if you played this game enough, you could probably look at a single wall block and say like, oh, that's level 4, oh, that's level 2.
Absolutely. And so, but because of that, like that, and they changed the backdrop and they changed the enemies, right? And that's it. I mean, the challenge is just changing the layout, right, and the way the enemies interact with each other. But with only making those few changes in each area, each level feels so unique and interesting, And I think it's because, like, obviously there's the core aesthetic of horror, right, of fear, right, but what kind of makes you play this game is its skill mastery and exploration. You want to see what the next level looks like. You want to see what the new boss is, like what other enemies there are. And yeah, that I didn't realize that my brain could be tweaked to follow that through with just some color shifting and backdrop changes, Yeah,
and the design, like from like a visual standpoint, the design is actually really only made up of, those handful of elements really across the entire game. You have stairs, you have blocks. I mean, the backdrops change a little bit, but like you have stairs, you have blocks, you have candles, and there's really only like 6 or 7 enemy types in the entire game. Like there's not a lot. And
I would definitely say there's less than a dozen.
Yeah, and it's how they come at you and when they come at you and the quantity they come at you in. Like there's really, a very limited tool set used through incredibly masterful and thoughtful level design, which means you don't have to rely on lame things like palette swaps, like, oh, those are the bluebirds. The bluebirds go up and then down, and the redbirds go down and then up. Like it's, and I mean, there's a place for that in games, but I feel like if you as the player got into that mindset because you're triggered by like the color of an enemy, that it would pull you outside the horror. So saying like, okay, all birds are going to be black and all zombies are going to wear the, the like ragged kind of lavender color clothes. And that's just it. Like, if you want to use zombies, this is what they look like. This is what zombies look like in our universe.
Yeah.
And
all of them look the same.
Yeah. It prevents you as the player from thinking about the mechanics of the game that are being communicated through visuals.
Yeah. No, I think that's actually a really good point, is that the game does a great job of not really making you feel like, or making you aware of the fact that you're playing a game, like it doesn't pull you out by being like, okay, well, this is Blue Ninja palette swap 17, therefore they do the following. It's like, no, this is this type of monster, and this is the way this type of monster behaves, which makes you a vampire hunter, because you are the expert on how his minions behave and how to act. And I mean, Netflix just recently released, Castlevania, right?
Have you watched it?
I have.
Oh, it's good. Yeah, it's
good. But and for any of our listeners who haven't watched it, go watch it. It's good. But at the like towards the end, like everything's all hex breaking loose, and one of the characters is like calling out orders, and they're like, this enemy does this type of thing. And that's the way I felt, where it's like, I know this is the way this enemy behaves. This is like, for instance, the holy water, right? Like the holy water, skeletons in particular are weak to holy water because it arcs. It's like the anti-arc to their weapon, right?
Yeah, I didn't think about it from that point of view, but it is basically like they're throwing, femurs and you're throwing, little bottles of water.
Right, but generally speaking, either the axe or the holy water are ideal weapons against the you know
Yeah.
the skeletons, right? So when you think of it that way, most enemies have an ideal weapon to fight them with, which
Oh,
again
yes.
drives home you're a vampire hunter. You know which tools are ideal for these, not for these game situations, for these types of monsters, you know? And so again, I really, for an NES era game, it thought they did a great job making me feel like a vampire hunter, you know?
Yeah, and I mean so the horror thing is I think you can't be aware you're watching a movie, playing a game, listening to music, because then it separates you from the scary, right? So like you
It
have
makes
to
you feel too safe.
yeah,
Feel,
you have to take steps to make sure the person, the viewer, the player, whoever is as engrossed as possible.
Yeah.
And so since you mentioned the show on Netflix, there was a moment where the suspension of disbelief was completely shattered for me, and it was just in a really silly way. So you never played Symphony of the Night on PlayStation?
this is the last Castlevania game I ever played.
Okay, so Symphony of the Night is centered entirely around Alucard.
Mm-hmm.
And like Symphony of the Night's probably the most successful Castlevania game ever made, and that became kind of the basis for a lot of the future mythology. So like Alucard and his deal is like mentioned very heavily in some of the other games. So in the show, Dracula's like, I'm gonna rain down, fire and it's gonna be really bad for these humans who crossed me. And a figure comes into the room who is shadowed in an impossible way. and he's like, Dracula, don't do this. And Dracula's like, I do what I want. And then they fight and you don't see it, but the implication is Dracula is fine and we don't know what happened to the other guy. And then like 3 episodes in, it's like other guy, and the girl who's in the room when Alucard comes out is like, Alucard, the son of Dracula? And I was kind of like, I happened to be in an airport watching it on my iPad. I just looked around like, yeah, did everybody else not know that? Did you guys not know that? Like,
is this a reveal?
The second he came into the room and he was all in shadow, it was like obvious that it was him.
Yeah.
Oh, wait,
yeah.
I get it. They couldn't write the story assuming that I would know that, but it was just funny because it's like if this cartoon wasn't written for fans of the games, who was it written for? But at the same time, I was like, yeah, okay, it'd be really lame if they just broadly assumed every single audience member had this wealth, decades of background knowledge.
Yeah. No, but yeah, that video is very good and in service too. I think it serves the game pretty well. But yeah, so I mean, pretty much that's my notes on visuals is, they're awesome. Like them. They're good.
Let me ask you one other thing, because you noticed this minor detail about Simon. I was very aware, and I don't know why. I was very aware of the fact that the only other humanoids you see are humanoid size, with one exception, Frankenstein. So the zombies are like the exact same size as Simon is. Mm-hmm. And the mummy bosses are just a little bit bigger than you are. They're not huge. Like if, Simon's, I don't know what his canon height is, but let's say he's big. Let's say 6 foot. Mm-hmm. The zombies would be, or the mummies would be maybe like 7 feet tall, or like 6'8". Like they're big, but it's like, well, they're monsters that are wrapped in like all this cloth. So it's like, maybe they're actually like 6'2", but they have all this crap wrapped around them. But then Frankenstein, who is supposed to be this horrible amalgamation of human body parts, is a freaking giant. Like, yeah. He's probably close to twice your height, or like plus 75% of your height. And yet him being that big didn't feel weird. I was just like, oh, well, the zombies are my size because they're other humans. Oh, the mummies are about my size because they're other humans, like in mummy garb. But Frankenstein being big, I was like, oh, God, it's Frankenstein. Like, it didn't bother me that he was a giant.
No, I certainly agree that it did not bother me at all. Like, that did not shatter disbelief to me at all. Honestly, so when we decided to sit down and play this game, I remember you had reservations because you're like, I'm not sure that we can do a podcast on this because neither of us are skilled enough to get far enough into the game in order to accurately assess the game. And so
it was a real concern.
oh yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the game's hard. It's just a hard game. But so basically every time I got to a boss, I really did feel like for Frankenstein, I came in and immediately like I saw Frankenstein and I saw that one of those little monkey dudes. To me, they were like feral monkeys,
Those enemies are reused later. They're actually little hunchbacks. So like they are hunched and they're also like small and deformed, but
anyways, I saw that and all of my attention went to the hunchback, not to Frankenstein.
Yeah, no.
Because I was like, that's gonna be a problem because I hate those things. But yeah, no, I want to get to music because I have a note that I'm actually kind of proud of.
Oh, sweet Jesus, let's do it.
Yeah, right. Because I never have notes on music, and so when I was playing this one, I was like, no, this time I'm going to pay attention to the music. And we didn't get into the general music. So the music is awesome. It's really, really good. It's super memorable. But on this sewer level, right, where there's all of like the creatures from the deep and all that sort of stuff, there is totally a musical allusion to Jaws.
Yeah.
Yeah, the opening music in that area is do 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 do, but it hits two notes back and forth in the same number of times, and then as opposed to like cresting like Jaws does, it then goes into the theme music for the level. But it is totally a musical allusion to Jaws.
Yeah, no, I can feel it. Like if the composer was like, no, I was actually referencing this like 14th century symphony, I'd be like, oh, okay. But I mean, it's definitely evocative of that same kind of creeping foreboding, which I mean, I know like the story is with when what's his name brought that to Spielberg.
Yeah.
Spielberg was like, but seriously. So, and then, it's like one of the most iconic pieces of music ever written. And, there we are. But that kind of the very simple, like, dun, 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 like it feels like you can imagine yourself looking around in panic, trying to figure out, like, a creeping horror is coming,
right? But
you can't see it. You can't tell from where. And that works so well with water stuff, which this is like the watery level with the, I don't know, what are they, Zora that like jump up out of the water?
That's racist. Not all fish people are Zora lions. But no, they're totally Zora. No, I think it's supposed to be the like what was the creature from the Blue Lagoon or something?
Black Lagoon.
Yeah, Blue Lagoon was
that's racist. All colors just look the same to you.
Colors, sounds. I pretty much live in swirling horror. But yeah, and especially I wouldn't say as certainly there's a musical allusion to Jaws, if not for the fact that it is the water level that it happens in, Yeah,
I mean, if it is an accident, it's an amazing accident.
Yeah. If it's an accident, the person who did it should never tell anybody it's an accident, because why would you? It'd be like if your boss comes up to you and says, man, you really slam dunked this project, completely thinking outside of the box. Very well done. Being like, oh, actually, that was completely unintentional and total mistake. So with that logic in mind, it by definition is an allusion to Jaws, because if you ask anybody, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, no, that totally meant I meant to do that. Yeah.
I think the one way you can do that, not to your boss, because then your boss realizes you're an arrogant prick and fires you, but like at a cocktail party where you can't necessarily be fired in the traditional sense, the only way you could one up that is, let's say that the creature from the Black Lagoon was the inspiration for the music in Jaws. And these monsters look like those monsters. So then if somebody's like, oh yeah, that reminded me of Jaws, and it's like, well, actually, and it's like, nobody's going to be friends with you after that, but you do have an even deeper, cooler meaning. So it's like, Jaws and friends, or deeper, cooler meaning if it exists and no friends, it's kind of a trade.
Yeah. And generally I'd like to think, friends, but
Jaws and friends. It's like Netflix and chill, but with Jaws.
Actually, I just pictured the opening to Friends, but with Jaws in the water fountain, So, no one told you life was gonna be this. Oh God! Oh God!
But it's the robot from the Jaws theme park ride. So it comes up and then just like breaks, and they have to take everybody off set.
Exactly. But so yeah, I mean, aside from that, we go back to my troglodyte ears. But when I picked that out, I wrote it down. I was like, oh my God, this is totally going to make up for the last two and the next two that I'm going to screw up. So,
well, you actually see you're selling yourself short, because you already mentioned during visuals about the death music. Because I mean, it's kind of, it's like a, I'm sure there's a proper term for this, but it's like a little short melody. It's like da na 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 na. And even that like is in service of the kind of horror aesthetic, because it doesn't really resolve in a way that's satisfying. It kind of leaves your chest being like, yeah. So it's it's frustrating because you hear it because you died, and melodically it's not very, like when you die in Super Mario Brothers, it's like do 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 do, and it's like. Yeah. Okay, that's done now. Like that's very final, and that's done. And now that pit has one more Mario corpse in it, and there's like a new Mario clone who's like trying to save the princess. Whereas in Castlevania, it's like da na 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 na, and it kind of ends in like a minor key, and you're just like it. When you restart, you don't feel empowered. Like, okay, I've got all my life. You're just like angry.
Yeah, no, you're angry, and actually, to me, the kind of feel that I got off of it. Because again, especially with NES era games, with trying to do something like this, it is kind of, the blank slate that they have to make it the blank slate in just the right way for you to be able to project your fear upon it, because the game is not itself going to scare you, because it's NES era game graphics, right? So it has to create the space for you to scare you. But the way like the music for the not game over, but the you died thing with the do 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 like that. Is, to me, it's like the game looked at me and said, womp womp, like, but like in a way, it's like you died, you died, you failed. Try again, but but this was the end of your story, like you messed up, but then to juxtapose that though, so when you would then get to the point where it was like continue, right? That's a little bit peppier and more upbeat, because I feel like they were like, if we constantly like kind of crap all over the player, they're just going to drop this and never pick it back up again. So when it's actually continue, which is very gamey, so it's not like, do you want to keep playing this game? Come on, man, keep playing the game. Keep playing. Oh, you died. So I thought all of the music in that sense, I thought they did a great job highlighting the core aesthetic of horror, of fear,
So this is kind of a mechanic thing, but you framed it so perfectly. I just want to ask you about it. Can you imagine that the continue mechanic exists because the death mechanic is intentionally like beating you down? So this game has infinite continues, which is super welcome because it's so hard.
It is the only thing that makes this game tolerable, in my opinion.
Yes, but you could argue on the one hand, like, well, why not just give you infinite lives? Like you can just retry forever. And I wonder if from like a level design standpoint and from the music design standpoint, if beating you down constantly would actually, like, giving you the little break of like, hey buddy, start at the beginning of the level. Here's this slightly peppier music. Like, come on, you could do it. Like if that,
you got this.
Yeah. I wonder how much thought goes into that kind of a decision. Like, we're going to let you die and we're going to let you keep playing, but eventually we're going to like, okay, you got to repeat the fourth grade kind of thing. Like we believe you can graduate, but we're going to bump you back a little bit just so you can like, kind of like get the feel of your whip again, get the stiffness out of your shoulder.
Well, I think that for me, and I may be off base on this, but this definitely drifts into gameplay. But the game had to be set up this way for two reasons. One is that, so like we said, is that if there were no continues or limited continues, the game would be nigh unbeatable, right?
Well, it'd just be so hard; it'd be unfun.
it'd be punishing,
Yeah.
right? It wouldn't be hard. It'd be punishing, because like you want to go explore, you want to go find these new areas and new things, but it'd be just too stressful to realize that a mistake you make in World 1-1 is going to, like there's no point in playing anymore. Like some other games where you really have to worry about like, what area of the level you're in, So with that in mind, though, I don't think that they could just give you infinite lives, because then you would totally just throw bodies at the problem,
Yeah.
You wouldn't be calm, controlled, collected, and careful. Most importantly, careful. You would just throw life at it, and that's also not what they were going for. So it's like, no, we want you to realize that every mistake you make has a consequence, but not a soul-breaking consequence.
Yeah, it's still a game. We still want you to have fun.
Yeah, so I think that I think they did a great job finding that middle ground of like, well, we don't want to make you so powerful that the game isn't scary, but we can't make the game so punishing that it's not worth playing. I think they found a really good middle ground there.
Yeah, the one sound note I have that's like, it's a complaint just because it seems unnecessary. Like they could have had a third sound. So there's the normal whip sound, which is, like a whoosh, and then there's the sound of it hitting something. Well, actually, when you just fire your whip, it doesn't make a noise, but when you hit something, it makes a noise. And there's a little like explodey flame to let you know like you broke a thing or killed a guy. And when the first enemy you fight, if you don't have the chain whip, that isn't one hit, is like the dragon, like the little dragons that spit fire. And of course all the bosses. I mean, all the bosses obviously take more than one hit, but like when you hit a boss or when you hit the dragon fire thing, it makes kind of like almost like nails on glass, like a wachink or like metal scraping against each other. Yeah. And it's kind of got a like, oh, they have armor, you're hitting their armor, like you're not going to kill them in one hit kind of thing.
Right.
But then you fight Dracula, and when you hit him in the body, it makes that noise, but he takes no damage. You have to hit him in the head. And I mean, you have the boss energy meter, the life meter. Yeah. So you can tell that you're not hurting him, but like, it's just weird to me that every other time in the game, as far as I could tell, that noise means keep doing what you're doing. It's going to take more than one, except this like one or maybe one other boss instance where it's like, nah, that's actually not doing anything.
Yeah, I agree. That's yeah. I mean, to be fair, I did not get to Dracula. I got to death, and then
Oh, I also only got to death, but YouTube's a thing.
Yeah, that is true. I did not check YouTube, and I totally what I wanted to do, but I didn't. Which was when we start off, be like, oh, how far did you get? Be like, oh, I beat it first pass, easy.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, really? No. But yeah, so that no, so that is kind of a misdirection. And if I were to defend it, I would say like, well, the point is that you are a vampire hunter, like your job is to go in and kill this guy, but he's Dracula, so like he's got magic and misdirection, and you may not have all the information on him, blah 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 blah. Honestly, though, that's a little sloppy, and I don't really care for it.
If he is the one and only time that happens, I would actually accept that, because then it would feel thoughtful and considered. Like, yeah, you hit him in the body, and I don't know, maybe 10 whips to the body will actually do 1 damage, so you are hurting him. It's just the way the life meter is displayed, it's an undetectable amount. But I mean, there's a limit to how much research you could do in 2 weeks and partially via YouTube. But it's like, if it's true that it's only Dracula, then I would back off and be like, oh, okay, this is intentionally changed up from earlier information to be more confusing and disempowering. But if it happens even one other time in the game, it would make me think there's like, nah, we just have 2 sounds.
Yeah. And so that's not the best. But honestly, aside from that, I thought that music was very good. The music was very memorable, because for a lot of games of this era is the sound power of the NES was not very powerful. So I think it could only generate 3 tones at a time.
Yeah, I mix up some of the statistics. Like it had a set range of instruments and then a set decibel range and then a minimum number or a maximum number of simultaneous sounds, which is why in some games, like you fire your gun while too many things are jumping and the music goes away.
But yeah, so if I remember correctly from, a video I saw on this a while ago, is that the reason why, the question that was posed was, how come we don't have awesome video game music in video games anymore? Because, like, how come we don't have, more Legend of Zeldas and Mega Mans, where you can just hum the tunes all the time? It's like, well, it's because you could only generate 3 tones at a time, which is just enough to generate a chord. All you could do is have melody,
Yeah.
So the melodies are all really, really strong, and our brains latch on to strong melody, but I think that all of the music was very, very enjoyable, very memorable. I thought the sound effects were crisp, and like when you would get a power up, it would make a very distinct sound and tone to reinforce the fact it's like, no, you just picked something up, So overall, I really thought it was pretty good.
Well, funny coincidence. You didn't look at my notes, did you?
No.
Okay, so under sound effects, I actually used the word crisp because I really, like, when I was typing those notes out, like, because I've like controller in my hand, keyboard next to me, so I'm like pausing periodically to take notes, and I just noticed after I'd been playing for a while, I was like, man, everything feels sharp. Like nothing feels like muddy or sloppy. I can't really think of many things that had like a fade in or a fade out effect, which I mean, the Nintendo could do through some like fakery of like volume, playing with decibels, I guess. But everything is like clear and crisp and sharp, and like that's the thing that made that noise. Like I understand where that sound just came from and why. So that's, I mean, again, like I keep saying this, but it's walking this incredible tightrope of giving me enough information to empower me, the player, without giving me so much information and so much power that the character is like this superhero, which is a weird thing with the music, because the music's not, I mean, it's not Silent Hill, right? It's not the Dark Knight with just like loud buzzing. Like music's actually kind of like going on an adventure. Like, hey, we're going on an adventure. Like, do 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 do. Like, it's actually not that like depressing or ominous, and yet it somehow still feels, I don't know, maybe like righteous. Like Simon is not 100% assured of victory, but he is 100% sure that he needs to be doing what he's doing.
Well, I think that both the music and the sound effects, maybe a good way to describe them would be satisfying, right? And that's because your character, and thus by extension you, the player, are satisfied with the work that you're doing, So like if you wanted to explain, the sound effect of you hitting monsters, why that feels good, because it feels good to Simon when he is hitting these monsters, and the background music, if you assume that that's just kind of like an extrapolation of his mental state, which I think we've kind of mentioned, it's like a thought before, right?
Yeah.
He's not earth-shatteringly terrified, he's careful, and so again, like that's why they, like, we the player are scared, but like why they set up the enemy design, the placement, all this sort of stuff to make you careful, like Simon would be. But the music is him, like he knows that he is doing what needs to be done, and he takes satisfaction in doing it, which is why we are satisfied by doing it. and actually this leads I think nicely into one of the gameplay things that I thought was just so well done, which is, so candles give you items, hearts, or money, right?
Yeah.
So,
which, I mean, money's just score, right? Like it doesn't do anything.
Correct. And just like in a real dungeon, I did not give a shit about finding money. And I thought that was really, really important, though, because, like if you are in especially from playing D&D so much, you're in a dungeon and people are always like, oh man, what's in this room? Oh man, 9,000 gold. I'm going to use it to buy all this sort of stuff. That's because the players assume, and the characters assume, that they're going to make it out.
Sure.
Right? That's not the point of this. Like you're not going to go back to town and use this money to buy stuff, so you are so much more focused on and worried about tools that will help you complete your quest and surviving that are usable right then, not money, which eventually translates to score, which I did not care about at all. And I thought that was kind of nice. I had yet to find a game where I got disappointed by finding money. When I find money, I'd get frustrated because I was like, no, I needed hearts to stop time again, because if I can't stop time when I go through this hallway, I'm gonna get my lunch eaten.
Yeah, that's so there was the money, and there's one other item that I admit I just did not push hard on what it does, which is like the little tablet with like Roman numerals on it.
Oh yeah, no idea what that was about.
I'm willing to bet that if I had pressed select at the right time, that something significant might have happened, because it's like the only button I wasn't pushing.
Yeah. It's a Gemini symbol, right? If I remember correctly.
Is that what it's supposed to be? I mean, it looks like a Roman numeral number 2. So yes.
It would not surprise me. And obviously we're going to look this up the minute that we get off the air, and you can find it in the show notes.
Yep.
It would not surprise me if when you pick that up while it's active, if it's like a score multiplier.
Yeah, I'd accept that, because it's definitely, there's no way they give you something as powerful as double damage.
Yeah, or something. Yeah, insane like that. And especially because, any of the other things that are like big uber powerful like that are very clear what they do, like the Holy Cross, that.
Oh yeah, that kills everything on screen.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Then there's what I assume is like a carafe of coffee that makes you invincible, but only for an incredibly short amount of time.
So yes, it does mechanically make you invincible. I assumed it made you invisible.
Is that because of the visual effect, the crazy glowing?
Yeah, it's because of the visual effect, and the way, because you seem to kind of like fade out and then back into reality, as opposed to like most of the time with most invincibility things, like do 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 do, and like you're like crazy colorful. This one makes you fade in and out of existence. So I mean, it's mechanically it's the same. You can't be hit. But to me, it was like, it's not that you can't be hit because they're hitting you and pinging off of your mighty armor. You can't be hit because they just can't see you. And so you're just kind of like moving around them.
So I can't say this for sure, but I think the enemies still respond as if they can see you. So I would split the difference between invincible and invisible and say incorporeal.
Yeah.
So they can still see you, but it's not until they swing and whiff that they're like, oh God.
Oh, darn it. Yeah. So you got like the 50% mischance, and
yeah.
And they always like roll low on their D100s. Yeah. No, I can get on board with that.
There was a couple things about the mechanics and the controls that I was hyper aware of them at first, and then immediately like got over it, which I think speaks to the quality of the overall design. Like, they knew they were shoveling in these two really annoying things, but it was for the right reasons, which is, I don't know if I've ever played another game that's a video game where you can't control your jump arc. Like,
yes.
Yeah, when you jump, you are married to that jump. You can't slow you can't arrest your momentum, you can't change your direction, you can't do anything. Once you have started to jump, you are jumping.
Yes. And yeah, this is the first game that we've played so far that's like that, and it is super weird at first, because you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna jump. Oh no, and it doesn't matter. But to be fair though, how high and how far you can jump is way less than it is in most games, because like Mario jumps like what, 5 times his height, something.
Oh yeah, this is a platformer in the sense that there are platforms and you have to like walk on them to complete the game, but it is not a platformer like Mario or Sonic or Mega Man, where the skillful navigation of platforms is what makes or breaks the game.
Right. And so, so for Mario, who jumps 5 times his sprite height, versus Simon, who actually, one of the things I thought was interesting, and this is kind of a visual, is when he jumps, he actually gets not that much further off the ground. He gets one full like sprite level, so that way you can jump over bad guys, know? but half of it is him getting higher, and the other half is him lifting his legs up.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
he jumps in a fairly natural way, like a believable human way.
exactly and that's the thing, is that the way he jumps, I would say that he actually jumps about as high as a human could, which is to say that if you jump and tuck in the air, you would probably be able to clear about half of your normal height.
Yeah.
So because the jump is so small, it's not insufferable not being able to arrest your momentum, because you're not in the air that long. It's supposed to with Mario, where you'll like jump and you'll be hanging in the air for like 3-4 seconds before you come back down. And if you were married to that jump arc, it's not so much that you're married to it, it's just that you're signing like a lease, like a 1-year lease. Mario, that would be until death do us part. This is more like until we want to re-up next year.
Yeah, and the level design supports the way he moves. There's just a handful of times throughout the entire game, and then there's several that are like, there's one level, is it the death level? There's one level where the platforming is noticeably more difficult, but it's
the death level.
Yeah, but it's but it's not early in the game. It's not spread throughout the entire game. It's like, this level is more difficult in this specific way toward the end of the game. So you should be kind of used to how Simon moves by now. And this is supposed to be a hard level. So, like there's, again, like you understand why they made the decisions they made. But the first, I don't know, probably 10 or 15 minutes of me playing this, especially because I know I haven't played this since I was a fairly young kid, was just like, okay, every time I jump, I got to remember, like, that's what I'm doing today is that jump. Like, I'm committed to that jump. And next jump, I might do something different. But once I start this jump, that jump is happening. And it's very video gamey to be able to control your trajectory in midair without any kind of additional propellant. But we're used to it.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's very important. Yeah, no, I think that was definitely very, very unique to this game. Just funny game related tangential story. So I got to death's level, and I could get about 3. So the way I would play it is I would, play it for a bit and then leave the system on and like go take a break, detox,
have a drink.
Yeah. Come back to it. And so I had the system running when a friend came over. And so we had a couple of drinks, and then, we're like, well, let's play, because worst case scenario, we die and it just puts me back to where I already was. Right. And that was when I was able to get to death. And I really wanted to beat him just because I wanted to be able to like wake up the next day and imagine it's like Simon got drunk and went and go and like killed death and like wakes up the next day in the dungeon being like, oh man, what did I do? What happened? But unfortunately I could.
There's the really obvious like trope allegory there of like the person who wakes up at like in a bed that's not theirs next to a person they did not want to sleep with. So like Simon wakes up and like his whip falls off his chest and he's like, oh God, what happened last night? And death is like sprawled out, like skull crushed in, robes all torn asunder, like spinning scythes like strewn about the room, and is like, huh?
Oh God. Actually, to me, I thought you were going with that. It was like, like Simon wakes up, he's like, what do I do? And like turns over and like Death's wearing his button down shirt, and it's like, hey, what's going on? You're like, what happened? It's like, no, we just hung out last night, man. I mean, it's totally fine.
See, that's a little too close to the trope and weird because it's death.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but then that would just make you Thanos, right? This is getting weird. But anyways,
does Thanos sleep with death at some point?
Well, Thanos is super into death, man.
Like skull and hood death?
Well, she is more attractive in the comics because of course she is, because it's comics. But
right.
But yeah.
Okay, not weird at all. Anyway.
No, it's totally legit. So one of the mechanics based things that I don't think you can talk about Castlevania without talking about is your alt weapon makes all of the difference.
You mean your primary weapon that you continually have to earn back from the game? Because the whip is your terrible secondary weapon.
that is legit. Yeah. Your whip is non-ideal in like most situations. Now, and if you got, because, so first of all, I think the game did a very, very good job. They always give you the ideal weapon, right? And then sometimes they give you the ideal weapon and then give you the ability to get not the ideal weapon. And when you pick that up, it's just murder everything o'clock. It's just the worst.
Is it just me, or is every non-ideal weapon the throwing knife? Like every time you're like, oh, I need the axe, and then they're like, yeah, also here's a throwing knife, and then you pick it up and you're like, oh god, I have the throwing knife.
The throwing knife is the biggest. It is the da-na-na-aw of this game, Yeah, every time I got the throwing knife, I was like, why? I wanted to say, why does it exist? But it exists to make you like thankful for the other weapons,
I mean, it's not useless because almost every single enemy, if not literally every single enemy, can move faster than you. So if you have the small crappy whip and an enemy enters the screen and you have the throwing knife, you can be like, oh my god, and throw a knife at it and maybe kill it. So it's not a completely pointless tool, but it's, in fact, I think the only place I used the throwing knife with any like notable success was against Frankenstein.
Yeah, I didn't use it on Frankenstein. I didn't use it at all, honestly. Like it just, because it took so long to fire up, that I found that it was better for me to be ducking, weaving, moving, and trying to whip than to stop and throw,
You can use your alt weapon while jumping.
You can, but I wasn't great at it, I just wasn't. I mean,
that would have made death basically impossible for you, because if you can't jump and throw the cross, like I don't know how you would do that. That is the only way I was able to accomplish that.
But yeah, no, for me, the big one was, and this leads into a story that I wanted to tell about my gameplay experience, was the stopwatch, man. Being able to stop time is pretty clutch in any reality, including this one. So at one point I was playing the level where the mummies are the boss, right? Mm-hmm. And so you can, if I remember correctly, you can only bring the stopwatch with you if you get past one of the checkpoints without dying,
Sure.
I mean, like what I'm saying though is that, like, the final checkpoint, the stopwatch is not there. It's in the second to last checkpoint, right? So I did that, man. I got the stopwatch, managed to get through the final checkpoint, didn't die, didn't even lose that much health. So like I had a solid chance. Go in there, hit the stopwatch, doesn't work on bosses.
I'm kind of glad that's how that story ended, because if you had been like, froze him in time, whipped him to death, I would have been a little disappointed, because that would be too empowering.
Exactly. And that was what because I was just frustrated, but again, I was like, no, bravo game, because I was like totally like, no, I've got this. And like when I hit it and they just kept coming at me, I felt that I had the all is lost moment look in my eyes of like, I was totally banking on this working and now I'm just going to die. And then it just like the music like fades out and then it like cuts to black and then you just see like the red blood splatter on the floor, and then it just rolls credits. Yeah. Like so yeah, that was my mummy story.
I noticed my experience with each boss was fairly unique, which is cool, because like each boss is pretty unique looking, but they also like deliver a unique gameplay experience. And like the bat, the first time I got to the bat, I don't know what I didn't have the axe.
No, you need the axe.
And the second I saw him move through space, I was like, I'm supposed to have the axe. I'm gonna die. And I made an effort and I died horribly.
Yeah.
And then like I came back with the axe and I was like, this time I have an axe. MFR. Yeah. And like just, like axe murdered him.
Yes.
When I got to the Medusa, you're supposed to use the holy water to like protect you from the snakes.
Mm-hmm.
And just the way she moves is just slow enough that if you have the fully upgraded whip, which has a decent reach, that you can just kind of squat down and swing at her continuously until she dies.
Yes.
Like I would say you can get away with that.
I would say that the Medusa head was like the Medusa boss was by far and away the easiest, because I wasn't clever with her. I just wailed away. But to me, with my personal experience, it was almost a slight misdirect, because then when I went into the mummies who were next, that is a non-option.
No.
You cannot just sit there and wail on those mummies, which is totally what I went in to do because I just gotten away with it with the Medusa head, and I got my lunch head, and then I went in there with the stopwatch and I got my lunch head. The way I was actually able to beat them is there's a block when you first come in. So like you first come in on a platform and then you drop down by one block and then there's the floor. If you hang out on the very back edge of that block, kneel down and whip, they won't get at you there.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was the way I was like able to figure it out. But again, I felt clever, I felt like, I tried a bunch of different things. I was like, maybe they can't get me from here. The one, my boss experience that was, again, just beautiful horror, so frustrating, but beautiful horror, was I was fighting Frankenstein, right? And he's got the little hunchback dude, and so hunchback dude jumps up, and I'm like ducking, weaving, moving, trying to wail on Frankenstein while making sure hunchback dude doesn't fire fireballs at me, right? And I've got one sliver of health left, as does Frankenstein. And the hunchback dude fires a fireball at me, right? And I whip out my whip, and I hit Frankenstein in the face, and he explodes into flames, which does not arrest the projectiles.
Nope.
And then I died because I assumed that when I killed him, the level would stop. And that's video gaming. And it was totally video game logic. And I just died anyways. And I was like, oh, good job, game. No, I shouldn't be allowed to get away with that,
Yeah. No, and you didn't realize it, but I penned the sequel to that story because you and I spoke during the week and you mentioned that to me. And I was like, noted. And then when I was fighting the mummies who throw, I guess it's supposed to be like their mummy wrapping at you.
Yeah, it's toilet paper. Yeah.
Yeah. So, they're like throwing, oh God, what do you used to call, you remember if you went to like a kind of like middle of the road public school, like kids used to like get Kleenex or toilet paper wet and then you like whip it at the ceiling. Did you ever see that?
No, what did you do in school?
I didn't do it. I'm saying
sure.
No, dude, you would like go, I think the point is you stick it on the ceiling and then it like falls and it like hits the next person in the stall.
I mean, we did spitballs, but that does not sound like this.
Yeah, I mean, you just take like a water. You're making me incredibly self-conscious right now. You just
no, that's weird. You're weird. Feel bad.
You take like a small amount of like thin paper, like a Kleenex or toilet paper. You get it wet, and if you throw it at like a smooth, like an unsurfaced ceiling, it will stick, and then eventually probably dries up and falls down. But anyway, so they're throwing spitballs at you. I'm gonna just cut all that out. They're throwing spitballs at you, and I whipped the mummy and it explodes. And the thing is, it's like coming from behind me, and I jumped, and it went under me, and I survived. And I was like, yes, because that absolutely would have been my death. And that was like my 5th or 6th attempt on the mummies. So it was like, thank God we had that little anecdote exchange in the middle of our playthrough, because I was like just about to lose my patience and have to like walk away from the game for a while. And I just had, it was like a corny Star Wars moment. It was like, projectiles don't get destroyed when the monster dies.
Whoa. And it's just, yeah. And it's like, what was that? It's the wind.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I 100%, like I said, like, and again, I would be, if that happened in a Mario game, I'd be really frustrated with it. But it was a horror game. And again, like just thinking that everything is going to come to a grinding halt when the hero wins it's video gaming. And that's not what this was, So I felt that was, acceptable. But
so this was one of my few complaints. And I mentioned like the committing to the jump arc is like, you get used to it. And this was the other thing that I noticed that like irritated me, and then I immediately forgot about it, which is every level has a time limit.
Yes.
And that like, I was like, man, I don't want to rush. Like, sometimes I want to look at a problem and like assess it a little bit, but now I'm kind of like aware that there's this time limit. It was a problem. Never.
No, I mean, that's the thing is that if you're moving through the level, in a appropriate speed, you're never going to come up on time. The only time when you're going to come up on time is if you literally are spending too much time in every area, which makes sense because you do want to stop, assess your surroundings, come up with a way to beat it, and then beat it. But you are in hostile territory. You can't just mull the problem, for hours. Although my funny story about that was it was a problem exactly one time for me because I fired up the game and I was like listening to the music. So I started writing down notes and I hit the thing, wrote down some more notes. And all of a sudden it gave me you're about to die because you're running out of time noise. I was like, oh my God. And so then promptly, to be fair, I didn't die through timeout. I died through my reckless abandon of trying to plow through the level before I timed out, and that's what killed me. But yeah,
I think it's fair to not ding the designers on foreseeing someone taking podcast notes.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And again, just like I said, visuals. Every death I had, I felt was my death, But that one was particularly funny, where I was like, "Oh my God, I had made a bad decision. It's time to make 5 or 6 more in a row," Because I was just like, and I knew going into it that this is not a type of game that you can plow through. But I was like, well, let's take a swing, and I did.
Yeah. So yes, the little jumpy guys. I got to admit, that hallway where you're like, oh, you stop time and that makes the hallway navigable.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't put that together.
Well, I'm not sure if we're talking about the same. The place where I found the stopwatch to be inescapable was when you're fighting the creatures from the Black Lagoon. Because you get that area I got stuck in for a while. Because there's actually in that level, it's a Frankenstein level. There's no midpoint save.
That's right.
Yeah. So I played that first bit many, many, many times. But when you cross that area, so there's a Black Lagoon creature that jumps out of the water and will knock you off the platform. But if you just go to the edge of the platform and wait, he'll jump up, go back down, and he won't jump up again. But then while you're on the platform, another guy will totally jump up and rock you if you don't stop time. And so that was where I was like, I needed the stopwatch because I never was able to get all the way to that long area where the eagles are chopping the monkeys at you. Or sorry, again, I thought they were the hunchbacks at you. I could never make the stopwatch last that long. So
yeah, okay. Maybe you don't have the stopwatch there. Whether you can or not, I definitely just had to do multiple attempts at that because it's exactly what you said. They hop in a way that you have this one perfect, beautiful opportunity to murder them, and if you miss it, you are probably completely screwed. And then because there's the eagles dropping the hunchbacks over and over, it's like that problem escalates in difficulty unbelievably fast because it's not just now there's this one hoppy annoying guy. It's now there's 7 of them, and you die because even though you have this giant life bar, almost everything deals 4 damage. So almost everything kills you in 3 or 4 hits. So it's a little misleading. I mean, I get why they did it the way, or I can see why they might have done it the way they did it, but it's oh, you don't have, 15 hit points. You have 4.
This is tangentially related, but I saw this thing online of great D&D stories where the cleric turns to one of the players and says hey, how many hit points do you have left to determine whether or not they need to heal them? And the person's and the person's about to answer and the DM says, you can't do that. You don't know how many hit points he has. All you can get is you can talk to him and get a general sense of how bad he's feeling. Right. But you can't just ask him that. He goes okay, so what do you, he's okay, so then on a scale of 0 to 89, how do you So I thought if I were the DM, I would have let that go because I'm that's pretty clever. But exactly. So you really normally get hit somewhere between 6 and 4 times, depending on what you're fighting. But honestly, I think that the idea is that you are a big, strong, hardy person. It's just these people are hitting you very hard. So I didn't even think about it until you mentioned it. But if you did just have 5 health pips, or something like that, and then each thing just took away a pip, that would feel kind of feel kind of video gamey, where it's supposed to be like, no, you have this tremendous amount of health. It's just everything hits you for a lot of health. And also, too, I do know I did not get this far or would even want to, but there is a new game plus feature in this game that makes everything hit way harder. So,
yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, no, they said when I was doing some legwork online, because I wanted to see how far through the game I was getting, so that way I could determine like whether or not I could speak educatedly about it. So when I looked at it, it's like, oh yeah, well there's this stage, this stage, this stage. And I was like, okay, well I got up to death, so I got pretty far. And then it said, and then after you beat, Dracula, there's New Game Plus. I was like, oh, New Game Plus, neat. I wonder how they did that. It's just like, just everything's a lot harder. I'm like, harder? No. Hey, no, to all of that. But,
yeah, which I think is a nice transition into the ultimate question. Did it hold up?
Absolutely. No, I 100% think that this game held up. I actually, so we've said, a number of times that there's, the nostalgia goggles where you need to have fond memories of this game if you even want to pick it up again, right? And then like the nostalgia monocle where, like if it, a little bit, and then no nostalgia goggles where you can just play it and it's totally fine. And then the weird other classification that we've only come into a couple of times where it's like, the game held up better than I remember it,
Yes.
I would say that because I was so scared to go back and play this game because I was like, I just remember it being so frustrating because and then you just like, you play it and then you snap at your mom and get grounded by accident because you were in such a garbage mood from having played the game. And then your mom would be like, why are you angry? You were just doing your recreation activity. You should be calmer. And it's like, no, I'm mad. And then they'd be like, well, if the game's making you mad, then you should just stop playing it. And no gamer has ever said that to another gamer because that means the game's beaten you and that sticks with you way longer.
Yeah. So, and I had almost that moment with Susan because she's usually like nearby reading a book when I'm playing games for the show. And I was like, God, it's so hard. It's so hard.
Yeah, hard.
And she was like, why is this game considered a classic? And I was like, I wouldn't say I snapped at her, but there was more intention in my voice than was probably strictly necessary when I was like, cause it's a classic. It's just like, but that makes you sound like a crazy person, but it's because nothing in it feels impossible. And more importantly, nothing in it feels unfair. Like you said this near the top of the show, is like, there's very, very few times that I was just like, I'm going to throw my controller through the TV because the game is cheating. I might throw my controller through the TV because I'm angry or because I'm frustrated with the situation, but I don't feel like the world is unfair and is out to get me.
Yeah, no, I never had that rage quit moment where I was like, nope, that was garbage. We're done here. Like the moment where you stand up, like when I was a kid, I'd just be like, no, this is garbage. As I have now gotten older, my new rage quit thing that Megan can totally pick up on is like, I'll be playing and then I will abruptly stop, stand up, walk over, turn off the system and not say anything. And then just like change to like TV or something like that. And she's like, how's everything going, honey? And then it happens, It's like, no, this is garbage. I'm going to tell you why. And then that's when the tirade starts, but it's just all of a sudden it's like, nope, we're done. We are done here. We're done playing this game. This is stupid. I don't like it. It's cheating.
I do think the difference though is if you turn off the Nintendo or the Genesis or whatever, game you're playing and you put the controller down, do you then want to come back later? And with Castlevania, I would say like as many times, God, I died a lot of times and I'm sure I would have died many, 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 many more times to be good enough to have beaten it. But I'm like, yeah, if I had the time, like I would sit there and grind against this because it feels achievable.
Absolutely. No, 100% agree. I think it's a great game. Would I do this to me again soon? Probably not. If I ever really wanted like a really, really good skill-based challenge, yeah, I'd absolutely revisit this. It's something that I think it's good. It hits the explore aesthetic very, very well, but in a very quick, concise way. Whereas like it doesn't quite have the depth of some other games that hit that note, but it hits it very, very well in a short amount of time. What I'd like to do is juxtapose that to like another game that really strongly hits that aesthetic, but maybe on like a grander scale,
like some more legendary.
Yes, like maybe not even, the legend of that particular hero, but maybe of like the person that they're going to save.
That's weird. No game would be framed that way. No such game exists.
Agreed.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone, there's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creeping with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while. You're gonna think back much less on how you saved the day